Hey everyone, I am so excited to be coming to you live. I never get the chance to do this. I get to talk to you in real time right now. I'm so excited to be here with Miguel Bautista. If you're not, for many of you, he'll require no introduction, but if you're not aware, he has not only had his own really intense journey with chronic fatigue syndrome, he is also the author of Thriver, Not Survivor, How to Beat Chronic Fatigue Syndrome. And he is the founder of the incredible program, Chronic Fatigue Syndrome Recovery Academy. So Miguel, thank you so much for joining me live today.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. I think this is our third or fourth chat on your channel. First live though. And this is going to be really cool because we'll be able to interact with all these viewers right now from all over the world. We could see all their comments. But yeah, just to quickly introduce myself, in summary, I essentially had CFS, very debilitating symptoms for about 4.5 years. I used to be a personal trainer, used to be very fit and active. And then my health deteriorated to the point where I was bedridden for about 8 months straight. 6 months I was living with my grandparents. 2 months after that, I was in the hospital to the point where I had to rebuild my life completely from scratch. So I went from hospitalized to bedridden and then wheelchair, using a walker, rebuilt my life from there using some recovery principles. Luckily, I found a doctor who helped me. And then over the last 6-ish years, I've been able to build up my capacity to now I don't have any symptoms anymore. I don't really have any health limitations, and I am thriving and not just surviving through the day. So it's really great to be here.
Well done summarizing one of the most intense periods of your life. It's always such a challenging thing. I mean, really, that could be a 10-hour story all on its own. We'll link for viewers some of the interviews when you've been on the channel before, where you talk about your journey in much more detail and the things that you did to recover, for people who want to check that out. But right now, I mean, the reason we wanted to come together and do this live, because we just thought, what a great opportunity. I mean, between the two of us, we've conducted hundreds of recovery interviews, worked with and spoken to hundreds of clients and people, thousands probably around the world, hearing their story, hearing what works for them. You support hundreds of people in your program, potentially thousands. I don't even know what your numbers are at these days, but I know you're really, really having an impact. And just between the two of us, we've made literally thousands of videos. So what a great chance to just come together and give people a chance to ask the questions that they want to ask.
Yeah, it's super awesome to have both of us come together, because I feel like, we're the kind of people, we're on the front lines of this stuff. There's a lot of scientists and doctors doing a lot of research, and we're kind of battling the whole CFS issue in another way through YouTube and content. And we're really interacting at a very, very deep level with a lot of these people. And we also know what it's like to go through this. So it's really interesting to hear all these different perspectives and experiences of people. And you just see so many commonalities between people who recover. And, it's not just one or a few dozen, it's hundreds and hundreds of people recovering, if not thousands. So many we can't, your schedule is packed with so many interviews because so many people are recovering, right? So super cool to see.
Yeah, and I see already we have hello from Canada. Oh, fellow Canadian. Hello from Serbia. I don't have my glasses on. Hello from Sheffield, UK, Copenhagen, UK, Germany, Massachusetts, France, South Africa, Scotland. Oh my goodness, absolutely amazing. Love seeing it. Keep letting us know in the comments where you're calling in from.
Yeah, all over the world. And yeah, guys, put in the comments where you from, and maybe, how long you guys have had CFS for, or long COVID or fibromyalgia, just where you're from, and then the length of time. It'll be really interesting to see the ranges, but we got people from all over the world tuning in, which is super, super cool.
Yeah, so I mean, as these questions start coming in, and people, please share them in the comments. That's why we're here and doing this live. We want to answer what you want to know. But as those are starting to come in and we get to those, I'm curious, Miguel, because you've worked with so many people, and I know your program, I know because I've talked to so many people that have been through it, and met with many of your coaches, and just having incredible success with it and some really powerful transformations going through it. So from these people that you've worked with and you've seen have these incredible transformations with their health, I think one of the most incredible and impactful things that you can share is, what are the themes? What are the biggest things that are delivering results for these people that are having the success with their conditions?
Yeah, that's a great question. And after just talking to so many people who have recovered and also working very closely with them for an extended period of time, I mean, this could be years working with somebody, but there's a few things that really stand out. I think the number one thing, and it sounds so cliche, is they believe that they can get better. And it's not always that we believe that. There was a time when I didn't think I was going to get better, especially in that beginning phase when you first get hit with this and then you're going through the medical gauntlet and you can't figure out what's going on. You kind of start to lose hope. And then maybe you come across some things online where, doctors are saying you can't recover. And you don't really find a lot of evidence that you can recover, but then you stumble upon other people recovering. And then it starts to plant that seed that, hey, if other people recovered, then I should be able to recover. And then as you start slowly getting better and better, you start building up belief. And that belief is what's going to carry you through those storms of the flare-ups, and we call them adjustment periods. So I'd say belief is number one, but belief will then lead to just this whole stick-to-itiveness, the consistency, and just continuing to apply the recovery principles even when you don't see immediate results. So a lot of people, they'll hop from solution to solution to solution without giving it enough time to work sometimes, because they're just so used to trying something and it completely backfiring on them, whether that's supplements or medication, or they spent a lot of money to fly over to some specialist and it didn't work. So they don't really have a lot of faith in the solutions that are out there. But once they find something, again, that starts working a little bit, it gives them a little bit more confidence, and it helps them stick to the plan even when things may be difficult, versus hopping from solution to solution. So the belief in recovery is huge. The stick-to-itiveness is massive, and just the ability to keep things simple as well, which kind of ties into point number two. I'd say that's probably one of the number one things that keeps people stuck, is trying too many different things and hopping around. It can be very overwhelming, all the things that are out there, versus if you just stick to one thing at a time and really give it your all. If you give it your all and it doesn't work, okay, that makes sense. Then move on to the other thing, but at least give it enough time and really follow protocols in order to see if it works. So keeping it simple is one of the other big things too, because when people start gaining momentum, a lot of them are really surprised. They're like, wait, this is simpler than everything else I was doing. So it's way easier, but I'm getting way better results for less effort that I'm putting into recovery, So it's a matter of doing the right things, not the quantity of things. It's quality of what you're doing and what works for your body. So I would say those few things.
I find too, in a lot of the people that I talk to, and this isn't at all saying to ignore medical advice. Of course, you need to go to your trusted healthcare professionals. You need to get all the tests. You need to get a thorough understanding of what's going on in your body. But definitely finding that in many cases, you have to be ahead of what your doctor knows, because the science around this is changing so quickly. And many doctors do keep up, and you and I speak to them and interview them on our channels. But unfortunately, the vast majority aren't on top of the information, haven't been taught the information that they need to successfully treat conditions like CFS and long COVID. So many people go see their doctor, told that there is, really not much chance of recovery. You just need to learn to live with it, where that is not the most up-to-date information. So that's where I think, things like YouTube and programs like yours are really great to supplement what you may or may not be getting from your doctor.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, we got a lot of comments coming in here. We got Denmark, long COVID, almost 3 years. We got CFS that declined for 25 years. Linda.
I have a question for you here that came in. I'm just taking a look here from Maggie. She has a question regarding brain fog. She said, within the past 6 months, all my symptoms from CFS and long COVID went away, except for the brain fogs. So any recommendations? Do I rewire the symptoms or what's best? So really good question, Maggie.
Yeah, great question, Morgan. I put it up on the screen here. Very, very common for there to be lingering symptoms, from what we've seen. And this will go away over time, and sometimes as you get better and better, your capacity is increasing, but some symptoms are, sustaining. You may just have to pull back a little bit to give your body time to catch up. Because if you're able to do way more than you used to do, and there's just this minimal symptom left, you just need to lower the capacity a little bit or drop the activity, and then that symptom will typically go away. Also, this can go real deep, but we found that certain symptoms are linked to values. So, if you're somebody who really valued using your brain and being very smart and intelligent and sharp, that is one thing that may take longer to come back than other things. Versus, someone who used to be an athlete, for example, they may have POTS a little bit longer, or muscle, muscle twitching a little bit longer. Anything your brain can do to stop you from, doing the things that you value most. So I think this will go away over time. It's just a matter of being patient with it. I mean, you've already gotten rid of most of the symptoms. So honestly, I would keep doing what you're doing. It sounds like Moggy's on the right track. What would you say, Raelan?
Yeah. And, in speaking to and reading the research from, some of the top people in the field, like Dr. Howard Schubner and Alan Gordon, they talk about how the brain and the nervous system use our cognitive and our physical symptoms in the same way. They can really be interchangeable. And we think of them as so separately, like there's that wall from the head up and then from the neck down. But just to, I guess, echo what you're saying, that those same strategies that you've been using to eliminate physical symptoms, when you're dealing with nervous system regulation conditions, where this is a significant part of your recovery piece, or the whole part of the recovery piece, those same tools and strategies are effective on the cognitive symptoms, even though they feel so much different than the physical symptoms. So yeah, I'd say.
Definitely. And there's, it's interesting, there's a whole nother bucket too, which is like the emotional side of things. We split it up into like the physical stuff, physical symptoms and limitations. Then there's the cognitive stuff, which is like brain fog and memory loss, speech slurs. But then there's the emotional side, which are the mood swings. Mood swings that can happen, especially when you're flaring up. So CFS affects all of these different areas. And I think a lot of times people mainly focus on the physical, but I would encourage them to take note. Don't track it, but take note of how your mood changes when you flare up. Just know that it's not you going crazy. This is your brain, causing these things. So you're not going crazy. What you're feeling is real. Hormones are whack. They're all over the place. But eventually over time, those things start to stabilize and you become more of the you that you want to be, versus this person who can shift mood so quickly during flare-ups.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I just finished reading Dr. Howard Schubner's Unlearn Your Anxiety and Depression, and it's all about how chronic anxiety and depression are learned neural pathways in the brain, the same way chronic pain, chronic fatigue, and all of these other symptoms, chronic symptoms are. So yeah, it's just really fascinating to understand that yeah, the cognitive symptoms, the emotional symptoms, the physical symptoms, when they become chronic, it's the same symptoms, the same systems getting you there and the same systems that are getting you past it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just looking here. I've got putting my glasses
It's a
back
lot.
on. I can't read anything without them, but I don't like wearing them. Okay, so we have another question from Harold Sammer. He's asking, Miguel, a question for you. My partner was able to walk again, 300 steps, eat by herself, watch movies again, but now she's
Wow.
relapsed. She's
Hmm.
bedbound, getting fed, fatigue. How do you start over?
Yeah. So great question. First of all, massive win to be able to get to walking again and being pretty independent, eating, watching movies again. So I would have to dig deeper. I mean, it depends what you define as a relapse. If she's been like this for a couple days, then it may just be an adjustment period. Actually, I had many days where, I made all this progress, and then the next few days I felt pretty wiped out, where I kind of had to be in bed for most of the day. If it's been like this for weeks or months, and she's getting fed, then I would say, look, you know how to get out of those trenches because she did it before. She did it once, she can do it again. This time we just need to do it in a way that's, maybe we go a little bit slower, or we just adjust a few things to make sure we don't end up in this kind of crash cycle, right? So I would share some encouraging words by saying, yeah, you did it once, you could do it again. Now we just need to fine tune how much she's expanding, right? We just might need to slow it down a little bit. So I don't know exactly what she was doing when she got to walking again. I'd have to know a little deeper. But yeah, a lot of things in recovery, a lot of times you actually don't need to change too much. You may be on the right track, but you're off by just a little bit. It's kind of like a plane trying to go to a destination. If that plane is off by a few degrees, sometimes it's going to end up in a completely different place. Now, it's course correcting over time. So during recovery, you want to course correct. So when she starts to feel those symptoms next time, I'd say, dial it back a little bit. When the mindset starts getting shaky and she starts, feeling like she's going to crash or wondering if she's doing too much, that's a good sign to maybe slow it down a little bit. And I definitely encourage her to watch more of Raelan's videos to really soak up that recovery information. Because a lot of this stuff, I think you want to get it to a point where it becomes intuitive. At first, you are trying to remember things and like, what should I do in this scenario? Oh, I'm flaring up. Okay, what did they say? Okay, do this. But eventually, it's just comes second nature, and you become very in tune with your body. So I would get her, with the extra time she has now, dive even deeper into Raelan's videos, my videos, just to soak up that knowledge and then go a little bit slower next time. That's what I would do.
Yeah, because we've come to understand that the trigger, the onset for these symptoms is some sort of threat assessment, whether that's happening consciously or unconsciously. And then the fuel for the continuation of those symptoms is fear. So I like what you said about it might have been expanding things too fast, too much, and body put the brakes on. Or for many people too, it's getting at the root of why you're perhaps on high alert to start with. So some people have, histories of trauma or fearful childhoods, whether it's even just from high pressure schools or demanding parents or being bullied, and figuring out, why am I on high alert and why does my brain and nervous system seem to continue to feel the need to shut me down? So yeah, and trusting the process and those 5 F's. I can never remember all 5, but the things that can keep us stuck, like the fear around the symptoms, the fixation on the symptoms, constantly trying to fix them, the frustration, and the one more I'm forgetting. But yeah, I think just trying to get to that place of, as big of an ask as it is, acceptance with the process that this happens, that it's not always linear, and just working on those things that can reduce your fear and increase little bits of joy in your daily life. What are some small things that you can feel joy? And that's about putting your nervous system at ease, because when you're feeling joyful and feeling relaxed and feeling happy, it sends signals of safety.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I know can be just so devastating when these things happen, because you're on such a good trajectory, and then you think, how am I back here? Like, how I was doing all this stuff, but it happens to virtually all of us. So know that you're not alone, and we get how really hard this is, but just to trust yourself and keep learning.
Yeah, you got it. She's got it.
This. Okay. Right. I've got another one from Jana. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Jana. Any tips to better deal with adjustment periods and symptom flares? I try to tell myself that it's just my nervous system, but I still worry a lot about the symptoms. What can I do? And I think it would be helpful too, because I know, Miguel, you talk a lot about adjustment periods, but that's not a term or something that people who watch my channel might be familiar with. So if perhaps you could start by explaining what an adjustment period is, and then speak to John's question about, how to not worry about those symptoms when this stuff is happening.
Yeah, for sure. So an adjustment period, it's a term that I just created to help me kind of relabel what a flare-up was, because in the past, before really learning about these recovery principles, I would see anytime I was flaring up, I saw that as a crash. And a symptom flare would signal to my brain, oh, I'm back at square one. I just undid all of that hard work I've done, started from scratch again. I just prolonged my illness by 6 months or whatever. So I associated any kind of symptom flare-up with kind of like failure, defeat, frustration. So when I learned through my doctor, thank God he helped me and he found me in the hospital. He explained to me that, look, the way you're going to rebuild your body back, you're in a wheelchair right now. I was 21 years old in a wheelchair. He said, how we're going to get you walking and exercising and going out living your life is by adapting to that. That's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take some time. And he gave me an analogy. So this might help you guys. An adjustment period, it's kind of like if you are trying to get stronger and, let's say you don't have CFS. You're trying to get stronger. So you start going to the gym. And then at the gym, you are adding more stimulus to your body. And then after your workout, you get really sore, right? Now, what happens after you get sore? Your body rebuilds stronger. It adapts to that level of stimulus. So if you go in there, let's keep numbers simple. You do 10 push-ups and you've never done push-ups before, your muscles are going to be pretty sore after. And then your brain and body goes, okay, let's rebuild more muscle. Let's make it so that next time we run into this situation, we'll actually be able to do it. So you get sore. Now you should dial it back. You don't want to go to the gym the very next day. You want to take it easy, maybe a couple days actually, until the soreness goes away. And then the next time you go back, you'll be able to do 11 or 12, and then 15, then 20, then 30, 40, 50. It has this compounding effect. So when it comes to CFS, the adjustment period is essentially a period of adjusting to that newer level of stimulus. And in AP, we call it adjustment period, or AP is basically a flare-up. It's a symptom flare-up. So this is why you notice anytime you may do something new, whether it's physical or maybe it's watching a movie, or maybe it's an argument with a friend, right? You may have symptoms after, and that's because that's extra stress on your nervous system. And then your nervous system just needs some time to adapt to that situation. So there is a big difference between a crash and adjustment period. I started to look at crashes as, okay, a crash is you're in bed, you can't move, you're spoon fed, you're about to call 911, you feel like you have 60 seconds to live. Like, I've been in several of those situations. I'd say that's a crash. But anything outside of that, it's an adjustment period. And it just helps you reframe the way you see the flare up, because adjustment periods are on the way to recovery, not in the way. They're just speed bumps on this whole journey. And so, don't get discouraged if you're having adjustment periods. The more you understand this, going back to your question, Jana, how to deal with adjustment periods and symptom flare-ups, the more you logically understand what's going on, the less emotional you can be about the flare-ups. And the worry is what's going to fuel those symptoms, because it's keeping your brain in survival mode. And survival mode is what's causing a lot of these symptoms. So the more logic you have around this, the less emotion you have around this. So it kind of works not in tandem, but in opposites. So in the beginning, when we don't know what's going on, when the doctors are like, yeah, you may have this, you may have that, you're completely fine, just go out and live your life. Emotions are at an all-time high. Logic is very low because we don't know what's going on. There is zero understanding of why you're feeling this. But as you gain that understanding of what's happening and why symptoms are coming and the patterns, the emotions start to drop, because your brain can only do one thing. It can only do so many things at a time, right? If you're logical, you can't be emotional about it. So that's what I really did. And that's what we really teach people. And that's what helps, because it takes the teeth out of the monster when the symptoms come. It just rolls off your back like what's that saying? Water off a duck's back. It doesn't really bother you because oh, I'm flaring up. Oh, this is supposed to happen. This is part of recovery. That means I have an opportunity to level up. My body is adapting. I'm going to get stronger. Just like how someone in the gym, they get pretty excited when they're sore. That means they had a great workout. And that means in a few days or a week or so, they're going to be even stronger. So it got to the point where I actually started seeking out adjustment periods. I was like, let's go for an adjustment period. Let's do it. It's time to level up. And same thing with, like hundreds of people we've worked with. They start to get excited about the AP. We actually, instead of calling it horrible or devastating or brutal flare up, we call it like a juicy AP. It's just, it's like a cocktail of symptoms. That's what it is. Your brain gives you this package. It's like, all right, deal with this. We're going to put you in survival mode, and just picks a bunch of random symptoms out of the hat sometimes. And it's testing you to see how you're going to respond to it, if you're ready to go back out into the world. So of course, there's ways to expand properly so you don't have too big of an adjustment period. But essentially, that's kind of how we see it, and it seems to really work. But does that make sense for you guys? Just put in the comments. I went on a little ramble there, but let me know if that makes sense, guys.
Yeah, that was really helpful. And what I love about the gym analogy is that when you go to the gym or you do some push-ups and you get sore, you don't freak out. You're like, I'm sore. Something terrible is happening. I'm never going to get stronger. You're like, I knew this was coming. And there's actually even, I'm like, a bit of a joy. Like, I'm really sore. Like, that was a good workout. And when I was working on my recovery, and I did a video on this years ago, and I said, I realized I was going to have to feel worse to get better. And I worked to keep it within that manageable amount. If I could feel a bit worse for a day or two, and that was okay. So I pushed myself to do a little bit more. The symptoms would come. I knew they were coming. I didn't freak out. I'm like, this is a part. No one explained it to me. I just somehow, I wish I would have had that explanation. I'm like, it's just part of the process. I'm going to do a little bit more, feel a little bit worse, and then feel better. And then the next week, it took even more to bring on those symptoms. And then the week after that, even more. And I could tell that if I got a big symptom flare, that, okay, I was expanding out those boundaries too quickly and I had to dial it back a little bit. But yeah, I think that's...
Yeah. It's really cool. So we had very similar ways of looking at it. Just, I guess, where did you stumble across that information? Did you kind of just figure it out yourself or through books?
I actually noticed it when I was partially, so not when I was in my worst of the worst, but when I was in a semi-functional state, still symptomatic every day, but had periods of the day where I was okay. And I was traveling a bit, and I could do small bits of activity. Specifically, I started scuba diving, so clearly I was doing much better than originally. But it's a pretty low impact activity, and I realized I would feel worse, but then in a couple days, I could go a little bit longer. I could do a little bit more. So I just started noticing this pattern of me slowly pushing out my boundaries, feeling worse, and then expanding what I was able to do in life. So I'm like, okay, there's something here. I don't know why, but for some reason, I'm gonna have to feel worse to get better. So I'm just gonna trust the process.
Yeah, I was the same.
Okay, so many questions here. All right, how about
Let's see.
I like this question here from Linda DeMombro, because so many people ask me questions about this. She's asking, is everyone worse in winter? Going out in the cold for 10 minutes made me crash for the rest of the day at least. And I get a lot of questions around, or I went on holidays and it was warm and I felt better. So yeah, any thoughts for Linda?
Yeah. So sounds like it's a case of temperature dysregulation, which is very, very common. I feel like almost everybody who has CFS or had it has experienced this at some point. Now, for me, sometimes this went away, sometimes it was there, but yes, heat intolerance or cold intolerance, it's a very real thing. Even drinking cold water, sometimes I would have a sip of cold water my grandma would bring to me when I was bedridden, and I'd be shivering for 10 minutes. The showers, it was hard to find that perfect temperature. Either it's too hot or too cold. So looking back now, I saw it as, this is my hypersensitive nervous system. It's kind of amplifying any sensation that comes into my brain, whether that's lights, like lights were brighter, sounds were louder than they really were. Touch was, it felt harder. Like my dad would touch my arm, but it felt like he punched me. And then same thing with temperature. So anything that is kind of colder or pretty cold, it's going to feel extremely cold. And our body has this kind of overreaction to almost any kind of stimulus. That's why I really view CFS as a hypersensitive nervous system. The whole label CFS, I kind of cut it out of my mind once I started learning this stuff, because my doctor just said, look, all you have is a hypersensitive nervous system. Yeah, it's causing a lot of problems, but really it's not that hard of a fix. Your body and nervous system is just overreacting to everything. You're like a Formula One car trying to drive in downtown. Like, the engine's not built for that. You're going to hit lampposts and you're going to run red lights, hit the curb, scratch up the car. So we just need to make your nervous system more like a basic Honda Civic, not a Formula One car in the city. We need to slow things down. So it started to make sense. So yes, this will get better over time. And the last part of your comment here, make you crash for the rest of the day at least. It sounds like an adjustment period if it's only for the rest of the day. Crashes take you out for months. That a crash can feel like it set you back several months. So if it's only for the rest of the day, I'd really look at it as an adjustment period. Some things to mitigate this in the moment is, honestly, you just have to dress a little bit warmer. I don't think there's a way to brain retrain the extreme temperature regulation away in the moment. I feel like that just goes away over time, at least from what I've seen.
Yeah, and I find too, in a simpler version of that, for some people are just happier in warm weather and more stressed and fearful of cold weather. So it's, I seem to just generally in life do better. But that was a really good explanation. Yeah. We have another question here from Hannah for both of us, Miguel, you and I. If chronic fatigue syndrome symptoms are caused by learned pathways in the brain, then how come they can start so suddenly before the pathway would have a chance to develop? And I'd like to jump in on this one just because I watched a really amazing documentary. I'll try and find the link for it and add it to the chat after we're done here. But just talking to some of the leading people in neuroscience, because our understanding of this is changing every month, every year. And they were talking about this specifically and giving examples of why this happens. And it's because we're talking about threat assessment systems, right? So survival is our body's number one goal above all else. Number two, probably procreation, pass the genes on. But number one, you got to stay alive. So wiring in the brain, those neural pathways happen lightning fast for threat assessments. So you can become symptomatic overnight If there's a threat assessment that's made, depending on how big, how severe it determines it to be, and how many symptoms it wants to give you. If it wants to, slap you down in freeze mode, it's going to do that. However, how the neuroplasticity in our brain works, how the changing of those neural pathways, the forming of new ones, because we never really lose the old ones, for things that aren't around immediate survival, happen much more slowly. So we can get really fast neural pathways in the brain causing symptoms and problems, but it can take a really long time to create those new ones that replace those ones that the brain believes are keeping you alive. So that's my understanding. I don't know if you want to jump in or anything you want to say from your experience with this.
Yeah, I think it's a very similar way that I view it. And from what I've seen, I like to share this analogy when it comes to these neural pathways. It's kind of like if you go to the Grand Canyon or some mountain and there's water carving the stone, right? The way your neural pathways are set up, what you're describing, it's kind of like if there's a rush of water going across that stone and it carves it out very quickly. So I wanted to see if I could pull it up. Water carving stone canyon, because that's kind of how the brain works. The more you use it, the more deeply those grooves become. But sometimes it can happen fairly quickly. So let me see. Let's try this. If I can even share my screen. Here it is.
While you're pulling that up, I just wanted to share from Sarah Barker. She just said, "Hi from Brighton, UK. I've had CFS-ME since about 2012 with a good break around 2019, 2022. I'm very close to completion, and just many thanks to both of you for your work." So just a shout out to Sarah. Very happy for you. Thank you for sharing that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So if we look here, if we look at this canyon, for example, right, these are some deep, deep grooves. This is, if we look at your neural pathways in your brain, this is like the habits and patterns that form over time, the more you use it. And so when you are dealing with all of these symptoms and you're stuck in this survival mode, this is what a neural pathway would probably look like in your brain. This is like your survival pathway. It's very deep. It's being used every single day. Your brain will naturally just go down there. Whereas the other areas of your brain for safety and comfort, let's look at riverbed carving. It's very shallow. So it's like a river that doesn't go as deep, like something like this. You can see the erosion isn't there as much as it is over here. So what we're trying to do is make this happen, but for the areas of your brain that, are more safety driven, comfort driven. Because right now, the areas of your brain that are responsible for survival mode, your amygdala basically, it's being used quite a bit. And the grooves are deep. This is why it can be a challenge to brain retrain away from those neural pathways. And let me stop sharing my screen here. The way I see it as well, I think the reason some people can have this kind of T-bone them and hit them out of nowhere is I look at it as like a threshold. We all have this threshold of how much stress our nervous system can handle, how much stress our brain can handle. So let's say your threshold is up here, and we'll look at it like a tank. As you're going through life, stressors come up. Maybe you're studying in school, then relationship stress, finances, internal pressures. As you get closer and closer to your threshold limit, you'll start to feel more symptoms. But sometimes someone won't even be pretty close. Someone won't even be close to the top here, right? Let's say they're like halfway there, and then a really stressful event happens. Maybe they get a really bad virus, or get fired from the job, or a very close family member dies. That can jump your threshold all the way up here, right? And the moment you go over that limit, we don't know what that limit is. It's different for everybody. But the moment you go over, it sets off an alarm system in your brain where it starts to go into this kind of survival mode. It starts to see everything as a threat. So that's probably what happened here. It didn't need so much time to develop because there was such a big stressor that happened in a short period of time. So that threshold just jumped. That's how I would see it. But that happens too. That definitely happens. Sometimes you won't see the signs.
So we have another great question from Anne and Patry. I like this one because we talk a lot about brain retraining, and brain retraining was so mysterious for me for a long time. And I know that for a lot of people, it's still quite confusing. So she's saying that CFS since 2019, what do you recommend as being the top daily brain training routine? What does brain retraining in action even mean? Like, what does that look like? And what are the best ones that people could be doing?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. Some people really like meditation. A lot of people that I've met with CFS, they don't like it because, very type A, their mind is going 1,000 miles an hour, and trying to sit down and not do anything for 5 minutes actually stresses them out. So there's different things that work for different people. Now, the way I do it and the way I teach it that we found most effective was brain retraining. It's a game of repetition, not so much sitting down and getting in the zone and deeply, deeply focused and setting time aside and scheduling it. The way we do it is, brain retraining can happen in 2 seconds. All you're doing is redirecting your thoughts down different pathways. And all we're doing is trying to catch ourselves starting to go down a downward spiral, thinking wise and emotion wise, and we want to catch that and just correct it. So this is an example of what that would look like. If I stand up too fast, back in the day, if I stood up too fast, heart palpitations, heart racing, a bit of shortness of breath, I had to gasp for air. So initially, before I learned all of this, I would say, am I having a heart attack? Maybe I should call 911. Let me get my phone out just in case. I'm getting shortness of breath. Are my lungs going to shut down? So all these thoughts just flooded my brain because those thoughts were associated with the symptoms. Every time I got the symptoms, I also got the thoughts. So I had to catch myself thinking those things. And when I noticed that was happening, I had to tell myself, wait. Miguel, this is just a hypersensitive nervous system. You're not going to die. And the reason I knew that was because I did all of those tests. I had the heart scans, heart monitors, echocardiograms, all the other things they do for the heart, the dye you ingest. So we knew on paper, those organs were actually okay. But I was obviously still feeling stuff. But now at least I had an explanation for why I was feeling those things. So I really had to, going back to emotion versus logic, I had to replace all these emotions coming in with logic. I had to kind of talk my survival brain down and say, whoa, no, heart's not going to just explode. It's a hypersensitive nervous system. We'll be okay. This will be gone in 30 minutes or whatever. So I had to do that probably hundreds of times a day. But everything I just explained to you, that thought would happen very quickly in about 2 seconds because it's just repetition. You're starting to carve out different pathways of your brain, and you're not really carving the other pathways out. You're reawakening them. Because here's the interesting part. Your guys' brains, it knows how to be normal. Because at one point you didn't have CFS, but it just so happened you fell into this. But the way the brain works with neuroplasticity, if you can go from healthy and normal to CFS, if you can get worse, it can also work the opposite way. You can get better. So it's not like we're creating new pathways, we're reawakening the old ones. It's already there. Your brain just doesn't have access to it right now. Like your nervous system, it has the ability to walk down the street symptom-free, hop on a plane, go travel, go work full time. It just forgot how to access those areas because it's so used to the survival mode route. So it's a game of repetition. You have to remind yourself, it's just a nervous system. Keep the emotions as neutral as you can. Every time I had symptoms, I just said, okay, yeah, I have symptoms. So what? It's just feedback from the body. And that's how you have to look at it, because that, again, will take emotions out of it. I looked at brain retraining as anything you could do to kind of neutralize the emotions around the symptoms. And it's a game of repetition. You're going to have to do it, probably hundreds of times a day, but it won't take hours. It's just, it takes repetition. It takes 2 seconds, 3 seconds at a time. But each time you do that, that's like one step in the right direction. So I started to associate me swatting away these negative thoughts, me reframing these things, reminding myself it's just a hypersensitive nervous system, I associated with that with one step closer, one step closer. And the journey, what is that saying? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So you're not going to take one massive leap and tomorrow the symptoms are gone. It is a process, but once you start gaining momentum, it can actually be a pretty fun process. As you start to gain momentum, in the beginning, it's not fun, but it starts to become fun when you can predict what your body's going to do and it actually follows that. And it's very rewarding to work your way out of this.
Yeah, I think the key thing I pull out of that, which resonates with virtually everyone I talk to, is that brain retraining isn't some magical potion or equation. It is thoughts, it's emotions, it's your reactions to things, it's your environment, and it's happening all day long, whether you are actively trying to control it or not. And what is the best brain retraining activity? Some people tell me it is just a thought that they repeat in a moment, like you said, 100 times a day. For some people, it's sitting down for a dedicated period of time and, repeating a phrase or doing something to actively rewire it. For some people, it's putting signs up all over their home because they can't even remember to think the thought because that's just how they work. So they have it and they see it and it's a reminder. So I think the best brain retraining activity, or some people say I took a program and they told me these words or this phrase, but that didn't really resonate. So I changed it and I put this word in instead. So I think the best one is what you think works best for you. Do you want a longer session? Do you want signs on the wall? Do you want a phrase that you repeat? Do you want to use someone else's words? Do you want to choose your own? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't think there is a best. I think we all want a prescription, like do this and you're good. But it's also empowering. Just trust yourself. And what resonates for you? What do you think is good for you?
Totally. And I think really important too, brain retraining in the context of CFS to try to recover, we have to really ask ourselves, what is the goal of that brain retraining? And I think for me, looking back now, I understand that what I was trying to do was get to a point of safety, a feeling of safety in my body. And initially, our brain, it doesn't know what safety feels like. It doesn't even have a reference point to work towards. So when you can feel that safety, even just for a second at a time, and you could do this through, holding a guitar or playing the piano or drawing or journaling. If you get that sense of safety, at least now your brain knows what to work towards. It has a reference point to get to versus not even knowing what that feeling is like, and your brain is just kind of running in circles. So you want to be able to recognize what that feeling is and then work towards it. It gives your brain some direction.
All right, some more comments coming in. Jana, who you answered her question earlier, just wanted to say thank you for sharing so many recovery stories and information on the topic. Part of my daily routine is to watch a recovery story, and it helps me tremendously. You're doing a great job. So thank you for that, Jana. Nice to hear.
Keep it up, Jana.
Also, Steve shared, you two have played a major role in fueling my recovery since January. I am amazingly grateful for all that you both are doing for the community. None of my doctors could give me any relief. So happy, Steve, that you're making progress. That gives me goosebumps and means the world for me to hear. Okay, we are running very short on time. We have maybe only about 5 minutes left. So maybe some rapid fire answers from Miguel.
Let's do it.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Did either of you have an aha moment? This is from Ben Roden. And did you have an aha moment where you knew recovery was truly possible or that you had a better sense of control of your symptoms? Like, what was the catalyst for this for you? So rapid fire answer, Miguel.
Yes, I think it was the first time that I flared up and I didn't crash and I actually got stronger. This is when I was in a wheelchair. That's when I realized when I got into a wheelchair, that's when I realized recovery was possible. So I was bedridden 8 months straight. Next thing you know, I'm in a wheelchair and I didn't crash using some of these principles. And then, that's when it clicked. I'm like, if I can do this, I just repeat this process, I'll be good to go. So that was the moment when I got into a wheelchair and I did not crash after that.
And I think for me, the moment was when I left Canada and I started traveling a bit, and it was challenging. I was in bed a lot. I was, it was, it was not easy, but I started realizing I could do things that I enjoyed for a
Yep.
fairly long period of time, and I would feel okay. But then if I did something stressful, I would feel terrible. So then it was that, okay, something's up here. And the more I did activities I enjoyed, the longer periods or the bigger gains I saw in my recovery. So I'm like, feeling better is possible. I just have to figure out the equation. And it took me, it wasn't like the light bulb went off and I instantly had it, but that was the catalyst. That was the catalyst for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a formula. It's a formula. It's not luck. There are definitely things you can do to make recovery possible.
Yeah. All right.
Let's see. There's so many.
Let's see. Oh, Andrea, thank you. Andrea Tralongo, thank you both for sharing so much information. I appreciate it. Lucas Dallinger, you talked about this a bit, but maybe a little bit more clarity. He said, how long should an adjustment period be? Because I am 20 days in an adjustment period and it's my longest. Did I overdo it, or is it okay if I react correctly? So how do you handle that moment when you're 20 days in?
Yeah.
What are my next steps there? And yes, we got 3 minutes for an answer tops.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question, Lucas. I can already tell this the way the way this question is framed, that you're probably a big roadblock is tracking. So the only way you would know it's 20 days is if you counted. So one thing with adjustment periods, and it's great you brought this up, you do not want to track adjustment periods at all. Throw the tracking out the window for this. Do not track how long the adjustment period is and also how intense it is. Because if you do that, it's going to get you hyper focused on the symptoms. And also you're going to be sitting around waiting for the symptoms to go away. And that's what the brain wants you to do. It wants to stop you from doing activities. So it's going to keep you waiting. It's going to stretch these symptoms out. So I would say once you stop tracking this, it'll go away much, much faster. And I need to know more about your situation, because I don't know what kind of symptoms you're feeling in this adjustment period. If it's moderate symptoms, you could probably sustain. If it's getting to the point where it's not manageable, I would say, start to pull back. You have to go between what's manageable and when is it starting to get not manageable. When your mindset starts to get shaky, that's when I would really pull back. But that's probably my biggest advice for that is just to stop the tracking. That alone will probably help you get out of this.
I love too what Alan Gordon says about these more significant symptom flares. People typically go through 3 phases, and your goal is to understand them and to ultimately skip the first 2 altogether. The first is panic. What is happening? I'm getting worse. I thought I was getting better. And then the second one is just pulling out pulling out everything you can to fix it. Let's do some somatic tracking. Let's do 100 brain training activities a day, which sends more signals of fear. And then the third phase is just to relax into it and trust the process. So not freaking out, not frantically trying to fix it, whatever you can do to just bring yourself some peace and joy and trust the process that it's going to pass.
Exactly.
We have so many questions here. Unfortunately, we can't get to them all. Let us know in the comments if you would find it helpful for Miguel and I to do another live session like this. I hope Miguel would love to come back. I'd love to have you back. But just as we wrap this up, for people who aren't aware, can you tell us a bit about the support that you offer? What do you have available for people who are facing these conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's been a great joy coming on here and answering you guys' questions, the great questions you guys asked. So similar to you, we have a YouTube channel. We put out hundreds and hundreds of videos covering basically any roadblock someone could run into for CFS. Any symptom, any situation, really, we have a video on it. And that's all free. If people want more help, more hands-on guidance where we create a personalized plan, we go in and kind of analyze the situation. We actually have a nervous system health assessment where we can determine exactly where you're at. We can even predict roughly how long it's going to take to recover. But yeah, we have the Recovery Academy, which people have been loving. There's about 10 hours of group calls a week, and we talk about stuff just like this. So imagine 10 hours a week of everything we talked about. You don't have to come to all of them, but people come join those. They ask questions live. They can watch the replays. It's a very solution-focused community, and a lot of very specific video modules to kind of walk people through recovery. So essentially, we've created a recovery system that makes recovery duplicatable, predictable. It makes it much easier. It's kind of like giving people a roadmap or a compass if they're lost in the middle of the ocean. So every now and then, we run free trials for that so people could just try it out without spending a single penny. Because I know I've been there. I spent so much money on things that didn't work. And I was like, you know what? A lot of other people are probably dealing with that. So let's just let them try it for free. And if it works, they can stay if they want. And that way they can really feel the effects. But Recovery Academy is the main solution we have for people. And then if they need more help, we have other options for that. But that's how we can help people.
Amazing. And everything, if anyone wants to learn more about Miguel, connect with him. Everything will be linked in the video description. So definitely take a moment to check that out. You'll see what he has available for free. You can find his channel. And yeah, just so great seeing all of your comments. Thank you everyone for joining in live. I love this. Yamuna, you guys are my lifeline for believing I can be 100% recovered. Goosebumps again. I believe it for you too, Yamuna. You will get there. And if you guys are curious about learning more about Miguel's program from someone else who's gone through it, I'll link here a video. I interviewed Krista. She is a wonderful woman, has a doctorate of physiotherapy, I believe, had a really rough case of long COVID. She went through Miguel's program, fully recovered, and has now done her own additional training and is one of the coaches in Miguel's program. So I'll link that. Really amazing interview, lots of insights, and just a really great human being. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. Thank you, Miguel, for being here today. I really appreciate you. This was incredibly helpful. I hope people watching found so as well. So yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining in live. And I hope to see you in this next video with Krista.
See you guys.
Bye, everyone.